Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of That Early Childhood Nerd. I'm a very sleepy Heather Burnt Stanty. Stayed up too late, stayed in bed too long, haven't had any coffee yet. And I'm here with Dan Hodgins.
Good morning, or not.
Yay. It's a fine morning. It's just,
Yeah,
it's been a short one so far.
right.
So Dan and I, are you an early guy, Dan? Are you like Lisa and up at the crack of
I am
pre-dawn?
not like
Oh,
Lisa.
okay.
No, I roll out of the bed sometime in the morning.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
roll out and she's already run like 10
Oh,
miles
yeah,
or
yeah,
something.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay. So Dan, you and I are going to talk about job charts because of a Facebook post
Yes.
that we both saw. And I don't remember a lot about it except a woman basically posted wanting sort of validation that she was right about job charts doing all these wonderful things in early childhood classrooms. Um and I think maybe we both disagreed with some
Yes.
of that. So that's what we're going to
Yes.
talk about as a topic, not as a person. I don't even remember who
No,
it was, of
right.
course. But so I'm going to start with a quote. This quote is from Alfie Kohn's Punished by Rewards, but it's actually he's referring to somebody named Richard Ryan. And he says, Richard Ryan has distinguished sharply between helping a child develop certain values, such as a sense of responsibility, and getting a task done, such as taking out the garbage. Getting the task done is the easy part, he adds. Behavior modification programs can accomplish that, but they actually forestall rather than promote self-determination. So I know that was one of our one of the things that's often used as rationale for job charts is that children have to learn to be responsible and learn to uh, be a responsible member of a group or a community. I don't dispute that, but I don't dispute that those are good things to want for children. But I do dispute that this is
They're
a
good
good way
things
to
to
do
want
it.
for adults, not children.
Yes, you're right. You're right. Yes, you're right. A goal for an adult, yeah. But it's another example of taking something that we want as an adult and thinking if we just push it down and make them do it as 3, 4, 5-year-olds, then that automatically equals a lifetime of responsibility.
Yeah, and I keep thinking my daughter, when she was young, for some reason was really detailed oriented. So if you walked into her bedroom, the clothes were hung up. There was a place for everything. And but if you look at her apartment now in Tokyo, you wouldn't be able to see the floor because everything is out. And
Mhm.
her belief is that it's easier to find if you leave
Yeah,
it out. That's her definition of mess.
yeah,
So
yeah,
just because she was that way when she was very young, there's no evidence that that will
yeah,
carry through as adulthood. So that rationale that starting early will get results, there's nothing to really back that in terms of uh, doing something early makes it happen later on. There's
yeah,
nothing, and again, there's that whole movement that let's start early, let's make children responsible, and then they'll be responsible
mhm,
adults. Well,
mhm.
we have enough evidence that that doesn't happen in that way.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, it's another practice that's based on an assumption rather than
Yes.
um, any kind of information from child development theories or science
Right.
about how children develop and learn to do things. So,
Plus, when you're thinking about it, who decides what's responsible or responsibility? Who
mhm,
makes that definition
mhm,
of I mean, if I don't take out the garbage, does that mean that I'm not responsible that day? I mean,
mhm.
it doesn't make sense to me in terms of responsibility.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's another thing that it's an example of is holding children to higher standards than we are willing to hold ourselves to. Like
Yeah.
if I don't want to um, uh, well, I'll just use garbage again because I often don't want to take out the garbage on garbage night, or do all the replacing of bags and all of the trash
Yes,
cans that I took trash out of. If I choose not to do it one day, I can make all kinds of rationalizations for myself about why that's okay. I had a long day. My back hurts. I'm
yes,
just really comfy on the couch right now, and I can get the trash out another day. And
right,
it's not
right,
that much trash. We've got some
yes,
space, but we're not willing. A child who doesn't want to do his job on the job chart that day doesn't get that kind of.
correct.
I would say often doesn't get that kind of um, kindness and
Sure,
and
sure,
perspective
yeah.
taking from us, and we assume that the answer is to push harder to get them to be responsible with these jobs that we've created.
The other component of that article
Hmm.
was the need to develop a sense of community with
Right.
children. And that was the part that, to be honest, that I was most concerned about in terms of how do you establish a sense of community with young children
Hmm.
as it relates to jobs.
Hmm.
Uh,
Yeah.
because I look at having three skills that a child must have to be part of a community. And one is the idea that others exist. I mean, it's a simple moving
Right.
from egocentrism to something else. That would be important
Hmm.
to feel part of a community. Another one is recognizing that others have needs.
Hmm.
Is to be part of a community, you really need to know that others have needs, and perhaps they need to be taken care of. And then finally, it's recognizing that you can be responsible for supporting someone. And those are skills that children aren't, young children especially, and some adults don't have yet because they don't have that development instead approach, and to suggest that jobs create a community, I think frequently might be just the opposite.
Hmm.
That, especially like you indicated, that if you don't want to do something or it's not important to you, you don't see the benefit of it, you're less likely to do it.
Hmm.
So, does that really create a community, or does it create a sense of mistrust of the
Yeah.
others around you? Is my big concern about this.
And a sense of powerlessness, I think,
Yes,
that looms too large in children's lives
right,
anyway,
right,
especially when they're in group care. Um, so this idea that if I can give them all something to do, and it's I think that's the inauthenticity of those efforts,
yes,
not the
yes,
intention. It's the inauthenticity that sits really um, uncomfortably with me.
yeah,
And the jobs are often, you know, um, line leader and
right. Pick-
table washer
yeah,
um,
setting up the table and
and those things are like we in our preschool when we do snack, we don't do it anymore because of COVID, but the children help to put the
sure,
things on but they all help. It's not one person, whose job it is to do, and and then they all help put it away, and we have spray bottles and washcloths to wipe everything down at the end of it all. And so I'm not saying that I never ask children to help me do things, but I think it's important that it's an authentic thing that really does impact the community, and not just a list of things I made up because I have 15 kids and I need 15 jobs.
right, right.
And I've got a chart from Pinterest that I think is cute. And that's an overly simplistic approach to trying to do a good thing, that idea of helping them understand the value of being part of a community.
Right. Plus, when I see a child that helps me at the table, cleaning it up, washing it up, that kind of thing, not now, but before, I don't look at that as this child is doing it because they want to make a better community life.
Mhm.
It's partly because it's fun
Yep.
to squirt and have sponges or whatever, and create, and plus the fact that the experience, the relationship that you build with the child who's doing that, laughing and talking and joking and having that kind of discussion is a real different approach than, it's not intrusive. It's a
Mhm.
real different approach than, this is your responsibility for today,
Yeah.
and I'll keep reminding you about that responsibility.
And
Um,
and I'll talk about how you didn't do it in front of the
right,
rest of your community.
right. Plus, Heather, I keep thinking we're moving away again from what is true play.
Mhm.
Because if you call yourself a play-based program and then you ask someone to be responsible for a particular task, isn't that an intrusion on play?
Mhm. Yeah. Um, and I think those things that you talked about, that growing to developing into the ability to understand that other people have needs and other people have their own perspectives, um, is more likely to happen during free play than because we
Absolutely.
signed a job.
Yes.
They're going to naturally experience those things um, while they are interacting with each other in play, which is authentic for them, that they've
Right.
chosen, that they're doing, um, in a space where they feel safe to do those things and where the teachers are supporting. I see job charts as sort of more of the hierarchical kind way of teaching, where I'm still, as the adult, the most important person
Yes.
in the room. Um, and if I don't insert myself in some ways, nothing, they're not going to learn what I feel like they need to learn. But honestly, I could sit back and watch a morning of children playing and make a list of things I see, a pretty long list of things I see that are contributing towards building a sense of community.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And I wonder sometimes, that is the idea of job charts more the adults need to be in quote control. And I'm not
Right.
suggesting that the author of that
No,
is
me neither.
having a need. We're not talking about that.
No.
But the whole idea of, in what was suggested in the article, was that because children are allowed to choose which job they wanted, therefore it was child directed
Uh-huh.
rather than teacher directed. And to me, whether or not a child gets to choose
Yeah. So
a job or not is not part of a child's ownership
right.
um, to what is being expected of them.
Yeah, I see this in a lot of different practices with children, and it's confusing preference with choice. And if you give them two things that were your idea and let them select which one they want, they're really just picking a preference because they feel powerless
Yes,
to really
yes,
choose what they really want to do in that moment. Um, and I think that's very different than really having a choice and really feeling empowered by being trusted to make
yes,
your choice.
yes,
So whether that's a job chart or here are the two activities
correct.
to do, um, I think that's a confusing use of words or a way that we're taking a word to fit what we want to do
Right, right,
and making you making up a rationale for that. But I think that's um, not doing what they
correct.
hope it's doing in that situation.
And to go along with that, that the one of the someone responded with that the children enjoy selecting the job and doing the job, and therefore that makes it okay.
Mhm.
Well, I'm thinking, well, children love chocolate pudding, or at least I do. And
Children love Mountain Dew.
does that mean that that is good for
Yeah.
them, or the program, or does it really just fulfill what the adult is hoping for in the future? And I
Uh-huh.
I think both of us agree that having some responsibility as an adult is not necessarily a bad thing.
Mhm.
But again, the idea that if we started early,
Mhm.
therefore it will build. There's really no research to back that, at least what I reviewed.
Mhm. Yeah, I
Uh,
couldn't find anything.
yeah,
I
no, I could. It's
both
hard.
with job charts and I know you've talked about this before, cleaning up, which falls
Yeah,
into job charts a lot too. You
right,
can't find anything that says there's a link.
right,
We
right.
just assume there would be because it seems intuitive that that's how it would go, but,
Sure. And then the other component was, well, those children who are, quote, not responsible will then learn to be responsible if we simply give them these choices. And
yeah, yeah,
again, the conflict is that who makes that decision about how you teach or model
right.
responsibility? And to me, it's the individual, it's the child, and what needs if the child is capable of doing
Mhm.
at that stage of development, and whether or not it really is an important skill. I mean, what's the rush?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I do feel like it's one of those, so I just was on the Childcare Bar and Grill a few weeks ago talking about circle time and calendar time. And
Mhm.
I think job charts falls into this too. It's one of those sacred cows that's been part of the early childhood culture in the United States for
Right,
so long
right,
that it's really hard to shift thinking about it. And probably because I've never used one, it's easier for me
right,
to say that this is what I think about it. Um, but if what we're saying is we want to be in line with what we know about how children grow and develop, we can model, you know, responsibility. We can use language that calls attention to other people's perspectives and other people's feelings and needs while they're playing if we feel like we need to have a more active role in developing that responsibility in that community. But I think to rely on something like a job chart with jobs that don't really probably impact the community all that much. Um, it's overly simplistic, I think. I'm not
yes.
saying that it's evil, but I think it's overly simplistic and not supported by anything I've found
Right. I always use the
research-wise.
example when I present is the idea of people who make their beds versus people who do not make their beds.
Mhm.
And so, in which one is better? Which person is better? And I think, generally speaking, the bed makers believe that they are better human beings because they make their bed and before they leave the house, etc. And those people who do not make their beds are slobs,
Mhm.
and therefore are not as good. And I think the same thing might happen with job charts and that too. That those people, those children who do and enjoy and like and follow through with what I want are better children than those children who decide to hide under the table
Mhm.
that day
Yeah.
when I don't want to wipe off the table,
Yeah.
kind of thing. And
And
so,
it's Oh, go ahead.
no, and so I worry that we give unconscious um, definitions of what's good behavior
Mhm.
and what's bad behavior,
Mhm.
essentially.
Yeah. Or we see the ones who just sort of fall in line and easily comply. And we think, oh, this is working for them. They're learning to be responsible. But these who
Right.
aren't, who's more of a struggle, it's not really working for them. And, so there's that morality piece that you talked about. But then there's also an assumption that it's working because some kids do it without problems. But that's just because, maybe their personality lies that way, um, or they do just think that the thing that they get to do is fun, and it's not necessarily that we've taught them
Right.
to be that way.
And there were some people who made some comments about, again, when they go to kindergarten or
Yeah.
the big world, that they will be better prepared because they've learned some responsibility.
Right.
Again, that whole
I
idea
think
that
compliance is what that's a euphemism for
exactly,
right there.
and if we get kids how do we get kids ready
Mhm.
is another whole argument
Right.
in terms of a number of things, but even as it relates to this whole job and responsibility component. And I think I worry a lot about the word job and responsibility
Mhm.
alone doesn't necessarily fit.
Right.
I mean, I worked at McDonald's, for example, to raise some money to go to college. I didn't feel more responsible because I was working. I wanted to go to college. That was my
Yes.
goal, essentially. And I think the same thing occurs with children, just because they, like you said,
Mhm.
might like doing it. Um, it might be what they're doing in terms of the process that they like, not
Mhm.
the job or the
Yeah.
end result. Because I often think when you give kids bleach or water and sponge and soap and to clean up the table, it's how much they can use. It's the fun part of it.
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
uh, Not the being responsible for cleaning the table.
Mhm. Yeah. I am not a tidy adult. But I'm a responsible adult. I hold several
Yeah,
jobs and
yeah,
I do all
yeah.
my things and I'm a a successful member of a family and a community, like all those things. But I got written up once because my office was messy,
Ooh,
because my organization system is to keep things in piles everywhere,
right,
and I know
right.
exactly where they are. And even when I say I'm cleaning up or reorganizing, it's really just rearranging piles and redistributing things. But
Yeah,
one day I was out sick and my supervisor needed something and couldn't find it in my office. So suddenly I was disorganized and irresponsible and needed to learn to keep my office tidy. And then I
right.
couldn't find things when they were like in drawers and file folders and
Yes.
um, trying to make it all digital and stuff like that. So I went back to piles, um, but I was still responsible. I still
Yeah.
knew I could do my work. I could find what I needed, and the center was functioning pretty smoothly.
Right. Right.
So I think of that whenever I think about cleanups or job chart and responsibility. That um, even as an adult, there's no one definition or one way that it looks. So how can we think that we could train for it
Exactly.
decades before
Right.
before they need those skills? But again, it seems to make sense. Like it feels intuitive. So we're like, of course, that must be how to do it.
Yes. Yeah. And I think part of it is uh, when you believe that doing jobs is going to make a child responsible, I think you can convince yourself by what you indicated earlier. If some children are doing it, the compliant ones are doing it,
Mhm.
and so it must be working. So therefore, let's spread this and make it wider and create an opportunity where they all have to do it. One person even responded that it was that idea that it helps children become aware that others need to do this also, because one of the jobs was to go around and remind children that it was time to clean up.
Yeah.
That's one of the jobs, and I'm
Yeah.
thinking, oh my God, so the other children are going to pay attention
Yeah.
to the child who's yelling, you're not picking up, or it's time to
Right.
pick up, and that kind of thing.
And think about the chaos that adds to an
Yeah,
already chaotic time of day.
and I'm thinking, and that child who's being the compliant one is being ignored frequently because they're thinking, I'm not done yet, so I'm going to continue
Yeah.
playing. So again, that idea that somewhere we've got the belief that you need to be in control, uh, as it interfered with what really is important for children.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah.
And I think job charts or job boards are one of those ways that some adults feel that they can be in control.
Right. Yeah, I think it's again, I've talked about this a lot. I think it's one of those things that we do to play teacher. And
Yes,
it's unconsciously sometimes we don't realize that that's really why we're doing it, because we feel, and it's the control that we're just talking about, but also this is what a teacher looks like in my mind. And I
right,
haven't re-examined it for a while. And so I'm doing the bulletin boards and the job charts and the circle time
right,
kinds of things, because that's what being a teacher looks like.
correct.
Or that's easier for someone who's looking in from the outside to recognize as teaching, which adds some pressure that I get. But um, I think if you just let them have their play and paid close attention, you would see all the kind of stuff, and then you would be able to explain that to the people looking in who don't see the job chart. But
Yes,
you could give them examples of things you've seen in play that show the same kinds of quote unquote results that you were hoping to get from a job chart, or they would want to see from a job chart.
right. And I think if an adult says things I'm picking up because it's almost time to go, and a child starts helping the adult,
Yeah.
I see that as a real strong sense of community,
Mm-hmm.
but not expecting it to occur,
Yeah.
and that you would have that responsibility as a child on one day and I would have it the next day is not natural
Mm-hmm.
in terms of its approach to creating that sense of community, if that's your goal.
Yeah. Well, then we're agreeing.
Yeah, I kept thinking if I put a chart up on my wall at home, and because I live alone, I'd have to be responsible for everything.
Your name in every box of the job.
Absolutely. I'm going to move that chart real quickly.
Yep.
Yeah, but yet I feel responsible and I feel like a
Mm-hmm.
part of community,
Yeah.
and I want to make it a better world
Mm-hmm.
for people. And I think partly it's because of my choices that I was allowed to make um, i- as I grew and developed,
Mm-hmm.
not what somebody else told me
Mm-hmm.
um, creates responsibility, but what I observed and felt strongly
Yeah.
about. And so I think part of it is just uh, that people do fall into the game. It's easy to fall into the game
Mm-hmm.
of what needs to happen to make children more responsible or
Mm-hmm.
feel like a part of a community. And
Right. And we've talked about the ones who sort of comply easily and fall
right,
into it, and
right,
they maybe are hearing, okay, I'm part of a community. But the ones who struggle to fit are learning early because of the language we're using. I'm
right,
irresponsible and I'm not part of the community.
correct.
And that gets reinforced as their identity as they're figuring themselves out during
Yeah.
these early years.
And if I don't want to do a job, what happens? I mean,
Hmm.
do I give an unconscious message that you are not as good as the
Uh-huh.
child who does it?
Right.
And I think we invite children to feel less because of how we unconsciously
Yeah.
give messages.
Just the oh, I really like, Dan, I love how you're cleaning the table. That was your job
Yes.
today, and I love
Yes.
that you're doing it. Well, I'm not talking to you, Dan. I'm talking to the kids who aren't doing their jobs. And so it's
Yeah,
all kinds of confusing messages um, with this good intention
yeah.
of trying to build community and build responsibility.
True, true. Yes, yes.
So I'm going to continue not having a job chart, is what I've decided after this conversation.
Me too.
Okay. All right. All right. So we can end it on that. Neither of us are going to add a job chart
Right.
to home or work.
And both of us feel pretty responsible.
And we're both going to continue being responsible
Right.
members of communities. All right. Good. I'm glad we settled that.
Right.
All right. Thank you, Dan.
Thanks, Heather.
And thanks everybody for listening. We'll see you again next week.